All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me know that you can hear the broadcast loud and clear. Welcome to MCJ Report number 179. Now, we are live right now across many different platforms. That's right, I believe it's at least 5 platforms. We've got Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Rumble, and Telegram. That's right, and we've got some multiple channels playing at the same time. So this is what we're doing this year, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get the word out there, and MCJ Report is definitely going to be taking a major focus at government corruption. Now, if you live in Australia, you know that there is no shortage of content matter when it comes to the topic of shady deals, handshakes that take place behind closed doors, corruption, and behavior in office that is otherwise not brought to the attention of the public. So that's what we're doing this year, guys. So let me just put something on the screen straight away. And this is a new email address, so I hope you can see it up on your screen. That's mcjaustralia@protonmail.com. So I'm calling on you to participate in MCJ Report. That's right. So if you know something, maybe you work in government, maybe you work in police or in the political sphere, or maybe you're a civilian but you have access to information that you believe is of critical importance to the public, then you can go ahead and email that address right there. That's mcjaustralia@protonmail.com. And I say that we just be brazen. That's right. We need to blow the lid off these crooked people, and we know that they exist, and we know that they're operating within office, and we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight on the show. But at the end of the day, it's up to us, just regular civilians, to keep these people honest. If you think that sounds like a reasonable thing to do, then go ahead and raise your hand in the comments. Anyway, I can see a lot of people tuned in right now, so it's great to see you. I see that there's the usual Facebook crew, so go ahead and share the broadcast, get the word out there, ladies and gentlemen. MCJ Report is now back. That's right. So we will be broadcasting live every Thursday night for the foreseeable future, and that will be at 8 p.m. So 8 p.m. on Thursday night, and that may change moving forward, but for now, you can pencil that in, put it in your schedule. 8 p.m. we are indeed going live. Alrighty, so anyway, it's been a pretty interesting few years, hasn't it, ladies and gentlemen? Now, I'd like to thank a lot of you for being very patient with MCJ Report, especially over the past 12 months. In 2021, of course, we were running the show 4 nights a week without fail, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. But last year, as many of you are aware, of course, I had 2 runs for office. That's right, starting with a run for the Senate in the federal election, and then in the state election, running again. But of course, in the state election, I did a little bit more than just run. I headed up Freedom Party of Victoria, that's right, and led 75 candidates into the state election. So it was very, very consuming. I'm very happy with the result, considering it was our first election and we were dealing with a very limited budget. And of course, the mainstream media did not do us any favors. I was over the moon that we were able to achieve over 100,000 votes across both houses. That was achieved based on the hard work, dedication, and relentless work ethic exercised by the Freedom Party of Victoria candidates. So truly a result of people power and heart and determination. And what we have proven without any doubt is that we are here to stay. But obviously, there are no elections in Victoria for a few more years. So what would be a good thing to do in that time? Well, I say that we need to keep a magnifying glass on these people in office. And when I talk about office, I'm talking about all levels of government: local government, state government, and federal. And sometimes it's these sneaky people at a local level that seem to get away with the most. So anyway, it's definitely great to be back doing the show. It was very necessary for me to take a little bit of time off after the state election. It's been, of course, 2 months, so lots of time to reflect. And last year it really felt like, well, it didn't really feel like it, I should say. It was a matter of me working 7 days a week on this cause and not being able to really invest any time in my personal life. And anyone that's been in a situation like that, you'll know that when you're the leader of an operation, sometimes it feels like you've got people pulling you in millions of different directions, and it's always a challenge to make the right decision at the right time. But as the cards have fallen at the end, I can tell you that I'm very happy and I'm feeling confident in regards to what the future holds for us. I do believe that more and more regular people are becoming aware of the misgivings of those in office. And just remember that great changes do not happen overnight. Some of us were hoping for a better result, but really what the result shows is that we were able to mobilize and achieve extraordinary results in just one election, unlike what we've seen from really any other time in our history. And perhaps things need to get worse before they get better. Perhaps the average person out there who is not happy with the state of affairs needs to roll their sleeves up, work harder, sacrifice a little bit more, because I can guarantee you that without a further collective united effort, Victoria and the rest of Australia will be heading in a place that you don't want to go, a place whereby you don't want your children to grow up in. We see cost of living in our country out of control. We see government mandates and policies that are seeking to, of course, increase the prices of our energy, the premature closing down of our coal-fired power stations, government intervening in the cost and availability of water. And on from that, we see, of course, huge increases into things such as the rental housing market and the increases in immigration. That's right. Now, one would think that it would be a smart idea, in order to alleviate the cost of living, to start with increasing the supply of housing and for the government to maybe scale back some of its many taxes on housing and development. But no, what does the government do? Keeps those taxes in place and increases immigration, which obviously results in a supply and demand effect, whereby, of course, there is less supply and more demand. So what happens to a market when we're in a situation like that? Cost of living through the roof. Interest rates rises, of course, 7 interest rates hikes throughout the past 12 months. So, things aren't looking that great, but what does look great is, of course, our spirit and the fact that no matter what, we love our country. We're not going to give up on Australia, and we're just going to keep going. We're going to keep fighting, and we're going to do whatever it takes. So if you think that sounds somewhat reasonable, then raise your hand or put something in the comments, because I'm down for it. We know that Rome wasn't built in a day, and anything worth having is worth fighting for. Do we agree in that statement? If it's worth having, it's worth rolling your sleeves up, getting your hands dirty, and getting in there and doing whatever it takes. And that's what I intend on doing. So I hope that you intend on doing that too, so that we can get in there, throw punches, slice them up, and sit back at the end of the day and enjoy an espresso martini because we did a good job. Anyway, all right. Anyway, where are we? MCJ Report 179. That's right. So it's been wild, hasn't it, ladies and gentlemen? So what are we talking about on the show tonight? We've got a few topics that I think you'll be very interested in. So I'm going to talk to you about an arbitrary decision made by a local council that resulted in the reported loss of hundreds of thousands of dollars off the market value of an array of local properties. Local homeowners lost a lot. Also, Daniel Andrews is seeking to permanently change the culture in Victoria. We're going to have a little bit of a talk about that, and this is following on from the third cancellation of the Australia Day Parade. And I dare say, don't think the Australia Day Parade is going to come back anytime soon, as long as we have people in office who clearly hold our country in very, very low regard. Also, the former Health Minister, Greg Hunt, he's off to greener pastures, that's right. And he is now entitled to the former MP pension scheme and is set to take in over $200,000 per year in his pension for the rest of his life. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. That's not to mention the additional travel expenses that he'll be charging to the taxpayer as well. So we're going to have a talk about Greg Hunt. He also landed a new job, which I'd very much like to get your thoughts on that as well. Also, finishing up the show for this evening, I am so delighted to have on a tremendous and courageous independent investigative journalist from the United States. Her name is Laura Loomer. Who here knows about Laura? Put your hands up. Now, let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. I've followed Laura for many years, and she has more courage than the vast majority of people out there. She has called out and exposed corruption from both the Republicans and the Democrats. She's put herself in positions whereby speaking out resulted in her arrest. She's been targeted by the government, restricted from basic rights. So most definitely, I'm very, very proud and happy that Laura agreed to jump on board the MCJ Report. I think when you hear what she has to say, you'll realize that we share more in common. Even though we're on the opposite sides of the world, we're really all standing up and fighting for the same basic rights and for the same freedoms that we used to have. So very, very excited for that. And that will be on Rumble, Twitter, and Telegram. That's right. So if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, when we get around halfway through the show, I'll have to cut the feed from Facebook and YouTube because some of the topics that Laura and myself discuss are the type of topics that the mainstream social media channels will likely kick us off, and unfortunately we can't afford that. But you can just jump on to Twitter, Telegram, or Rumble. My username is the same across all those platforms, Morgan C. Jonas, no space. So that is definitely a great way that we can make sure that we don't get censored. Alrighty, shall we get this started, ladies and gentlemen? I can see a bunch of you there. There's Tina, Simone, Stephen, Georgia, Joyce, Mark, Harps. I see a lot of familiar names and some new ones as well. Alrighty, so I'm going to get started in a typical MCJ manner. Now, no, we're not starting with this guy right here, so I'm just going to get rid of Daniel Andrews' face, and we're going to go through some news and events. Alrighty, New Zealand opinion poll shows Labor's vote rising since Jacinda Ardern resigned as PM. So we obviously know that Jacinda Ardern resigned as the Prime Minister of New Zealand. The reported reason she gave was that she is only human, and that is something that some people might argue, and that she just wants to get back to being a regular person, and that she's only a human being, and the effects of office took its toll on her. And now we see this poll coming out showing that New Zealanders are more eager to vote for New Zealand Labor now, as opposed to when they were when she was in office. Now, if it's one thing we know about politicians that enjoy the power trip, it's that once they attain power, it's very unlikely they would voluntarily give that power up. So as soon as I was made aware that Jacinda Ardern had resigned, I did not take her reasoning for the resignation at face value. I thought to myself, maybe she's compromised, maybe she's tanking in popularity, maybe she's been forced out by her fellow party members. It just didn't stack up that somebody like her, who seemingly loves the power. Remember, she was the Prime Minister who proclaimed that the New Zealand government is the single source of truth for the New Zealand people. I mean, this is a propagandist at its worst. And now, of course, we see this poll. But unfortunately, this poll really doesn't tell us anything all that great, if you ask me. All it suggests is that potentially New Zealand Labor voters would prefer a Prime Minister who is less radical than Jacinda Ardern. What we would really like to convey to the voting public over in New Zealand, and of course around the world, and Victoria is no difference with the lunatic known as Daniel Andrews, is that people like Jacinda Ardern are simply symptomatic of a system that is not fit for purpose, a system that is rotten from the inside out, and that instigating major political change will really require a huge effort on behalf of regular people. But in order to make that effort, we first must recognize that there is something seriously wrong with the system. And unfortunately, history shows us in regards to voting that people will generally vote for what's familiar rather than to take a chance at something better. So instigating a large-scale political change is not easy, but it's certainly possible. It has been done many times throughout history. So let me just say that yes, it's hard, but it's not impossible, and all you need to do is keep on fighting. Alrighty, moving along here. What do we have next? Bill Gates speaks about time spent with Jeffrey Epstein. Who here saw this? I mean, it really seems like this is just one big club, and of course, you and I are not in this club. Bill Gates admitting that he had dinner with Jeffrey Epstein, but proclaiming that, hey, it was only a dinner, and in retrospect, I should not have attended. Okay, so Bill Gates, by omission there, essentially recognizing it was a, quote, bad look to have dinner with Jeffrey Epstein. Bad look, you think? Well, who else made these types of remarks? One person's name who comes to mind happens to be the brother of the head of state of Australia. I know it sounds really bad when I say it like that, doesn't it, ladies and gentlemen? His name is Prince Andrew. Who here saw the Prince Andrew interview after he was busted, not just meeting with Jeffrey Epstein, but staying multiple nights in Jeffrey Epstein's house after Epstein had been convicted of child-related crimes? Okay, Prince Andrew, oh yeah, in retrospect, I probably shouldn't have gone for that walk. In retrospect, I probably shouldn't have stayed in his house. But now with the benefit of hindsight, I can see that I made a mistake. So we see Prince Andrew and Bill Gates using the same excuse as to why they were hanging out with the disgraced Jeffrey Epstein. So what do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Do you think that the dinner between Gates and Epstein was just an innocent mistake? Or do you think there could be something else to it? We know that the ex-wife of Bill Gates, she had things to say about it, but I'm more interested to hear from you. So maybe you can strike this conversation up with your friends and family around the dinner table, because it is indeed Bill Gates that is pouring a huge amount of money, of course, into Australian universities, into vaccine research and development, and also, of course, heading up the next wave of pandemic simulation exercises that have already kicked off in, I believe, Brussels. All right, moving along here. All right, so staying on the topic of Bill Gates warns Australia to prepare for the next pandemic. Yeah, so apparently this man has a crystal ball. He's able to see into the future, and he's been, of course, very busy with the catastrophic contagion event, with Australia keeping a very keen eye on it. Okay, so the Gates Foundation and the Johns Hopkins Centre conducting what they refer to as a, quote, tabletop exercise, and that was in Belgium. Okay, so we saw something very similar in 2019. I think it was referred to as Event 209. Correct me, Event 109, Event 209. Another pandemic simulation exercise. So we see these events taking place and becoming more and more common. It's almost as if the people attending these events have some type of greater foresight as to what we, just the general civilian public, have. So where do you think this is all heading, ladies and gentlemen? And do you think that it's anything to be concerned about? All right. Here's something else that you want to look out for, the so-called Grand Challenges Exploration Grant. More money, of course, from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, lining the pockets of various Australian universities, namely here the Monash University and the Melbourne University. So speaking of the Melbourne University, who here saw this course? So what you can do right now is head on over to the Melbourne Uni website. You can enroll, and you too can become an expert in, quote, pandemic preparedness and response. That's right. So this is a course now at the University of Melbourne. So they will be instructing students on how to prepare for pandemics. So everything from pandemic policy, vaccination rollouts, how the logistics involved in the vaccine distribution supply chain channels and things like that. So there you go, Melbourne University preparing for the future, and it's very interesting to see this new industry emerge, wouldn't you say, ladies and gentlemen? All right, moving along to related news here, we see, of course, via Monash University, mRNA vaccine manufacturing facility commences in Melbourne. That's right. So when we speak about homegrown manufacturing, for a lot of people, this is not exactly what we have in mind, but we know that the Australian government, and of course with Moderna and the Victorian state government, pouring huge amounts of money into this operation. So Victoria definitely looking to take its place in the world for the development of these drugs. Yeah, so it doesn't really appear to be slowing down. We see calls from our government calling for a 5th shot. And yeah, so you really just need to keep your finger on the pulse. So I don't know about you at home, but for me, I'm never going to comply with any laws or policies that I consider to be inhumane, at odds with our human right, not grounded in any type of common sense, laws or policies whereby there is the very large likelihood of conflict of interest. I'm very happy to put on record that I consider it a civic responsibility and duty that good men and women actually disobey laws that are designed to not help the public but hurt the public at the expense of potentially lining the shareholders of those who have special interests. And you shouldn't be ashamed to hold that position either, and to encourage your friends and family to stand up for themselves, because what I can say is that the more and more people who comply with nonsensical policy, well, that is an absolute roadmap to tyranny. When the laws and regulations fail to make sense, when language from the government becomes distorted, when lies become reality, you can be absolutely sure that tyranny is around the corner, and it will be around the corner unless good people stand up. All right, so anyway, a little bit more doom and gloom here, unfortunately. Working families face highest cost of living rises in 20 years. Okay, so the government likes to, of course, present themselves in a manner that is economically responsible. But we see the cost of living very difficult in Australia due to government regulation that is affecting all different areas of our life, from water in our farms, food supply, energy. We see the projection of energy costs tipped to rise by 50% in 2 years. And of course, the rental market has taken a massive, massive hit, and that hit is only expected to worsen with increasing immigration. So all I can say is get the damn word out there. And I don't mean to laugh. It's just that I do think that we're heading nowhere good in this country. And I'd like to encourage everybody to prepare for the future. Maybe you need to think about diversifying your income. Maybe you need to look at, if you do have capital, you might want to consider gold or silver, something tangible, something that holds intrinsic value. I don't trust the government to pour a glass of water, let alone manage our economy. So especially if you have a family, if you're concerned about the future, start being creative. And I'm going to be exploring some creative avenues here on MCJ Report that can potentially safeguard people who want to prepare for the future and to prepare for the worst case scenario. You know what they say in life, right? It's better to have things that you don't need than to need things that you don't have. So that's a very basic outlook. So you can expect a lot more of that. Yeah, so we see apartment prices going up and migration increasing. So, alrighty, so that just about wraps it up for the opening session there, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just make sure that we're connected okay. Let's see. I can see a bunch of you on YouTube. That's right. So there's Tony. Welcome on board. And yeah, we haven't even touched on the whole surveillance, digital identity, the director's ID. Put your hand up if you run a business and you've been hit up by the government for the director's ID and threatened with a massive 5-figure fine if you don't sign up. I mean, it really boggles the mind, doesn't it? It's like the government's telling you, we've got this great product, it's for your best interest, it's going to make your life easy, it's going to produce a wonderful result. But if you don't take this product, we'll fine you $15,000. Maybe we'll put you in jail as well. Who knows? 201. That's right. Thanks, Sandy. Alrighty. All right. So I'm gonna move along here. Let's just get this underway, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? So what do we have? Alrighty. All right. So here's some good news. The good news is that you can never stop anything or anyone from allowing you to enjoy your life, and that is why I'm so happy to be heading on over to the Caledonian Hotel in Singleton, New South Wales on Saturday, February 18th from 5 p.m. onwards. You know, some people dream about going to the Empire State Building. Some people dream about going to the pyramids or the Eiffel Tower. I dream about places like this. The reason being, the owner of the Caledonian Hotel, Brad, he's an absolute Australian legend. He is the embodiment of what the Australian spirit is supposed to be. He has been threatened, of course, like so many people throughout the past few years, but he never ever backed down. He refused to discriminate against his patrons. He refused to close his doors when the government unfairly ordered him to do so. He's also received really unfounded assaults by the local council in relation to the red ensign flag on the top of his building, the council trying to stick their noses in places where they're simply not welcome. So if you happen to be in New South Wales, or if you feel like going for a road trip, come on down to the Caledonian Hotel, Saturday, February 18th, 5 p.m. That's Singleton, New South Wales. Come and have a beer with me. I'll be doing a talk on the state of affairs in Victoria and some of the things that we've been subjected to over the past 3 years and where I think it's all heading. So of course, if you can make it down, I would certainly love to hear from you. Alrighty, so what do we have here, ladies and gentlemen? All right, local council heritage lists 900 homes. This is really interesting. Who here heard about this? Local council heritage lists 900 homes. Now, usually when you think about a heritage listing, you think about a property that looks something like this. But in this case, we're talking about properties that look like this. Pretty different, wouldn't you say, ladies and gentlemen? So what exactly has gone on here? Now, the decision to place what they call this interim heritage overlay on 900 properties that fall within the local region of the Maribyrnong City Council actually took place a few years ago, but was only recently reported on courtesy of The Age. Now, this is actually pretty interesting. You see, the local residents were not advised of the decision of this council to heritage list these homes. They were never consulted, and as a result of this interim listing that the council is seeking to make permanent, we see homeowners have actually had their rights very much taken away from them. Now, we know here in Australia that private property owners' rights have been under attack for a very, very long time, but I think this is really taking it to a new level. So what exactly is the problem here? Well, once a property becomes heritage listed, the homeowner is very limited in regards to changes they can make within their homes. Changes such as value adding, such as changing the appearance of the home, renovations, extensions, and things like that. So just from reading the article the other day, it appears that there was a supposed expert consultant. His name was Ian White. So Ian White from the Heritage Foundation seems to think that it's okay for these homeowners to have their rights trampled over by the council. I'm going to show you what he said here. All right, so we're talking about the Royal Historical Society of Victoria, all right? So the Heritage Committee Deputy Chair, Ian White, said that introducing interim controls without consultation was a strategy sometimes used by councils to minimise the risk of homeowners rushing to redevelop, okay? Because supposedly homeowners don't have the right to redevelop their home, and that decisions to obstruct them from doing so should be left up to a bunch of people who have the capability to arbitrarily declare who can renovate and who cannot. Goes on to say here, he said it was normal for heritage protection to be applied at a precinct level, and the 8 areas chosen by Maribyrnong Council appeared to be carefully selected rather than in large sweeping swaths. Alrighty, so that's pretty interesting. They're carefully selected. So what this language sounds like to me is very, very socialist in nature. Of course, we know at the core of socialism is the erosion of private property rights. So I went looking at the internet thinking that maybe this is not actually a legitimate photo of Ian, and maybe there is another photo out there that is more indicative of the type of character who believes that people's private property rights should be taken away. And I found this one right here. So what do you think, ladies and gentlemen? I think this is a lot more fitting for one who has the view that that homeowners should have no say what happens to their home in terms of these heritage listings. So anyway, I'm going to show you a little slideshow here of the homes, the properties, whereby the owners are very, very restricted and limited as to what they can do with their homes. And also, according to The Age, these homes have reportedly lost hundreds of thousands of dollars off their value. So take a look at these. So what do you think there, ladies and gentlemen? Do those look like properties that would be deserving of some type of heritage listings or meet the criteria, such as a property like this? A lot of those homes, as you can see, look dilapidated, and those photos are courtesy of The Age. So what actually is going on here? Is it really the objective to preserve the character of the neighborhood? Because the character to me looks dilapidated, it looks old, it looks like it's in need of revitalization. Why would a council want to hold people down? Why would a council want to hold local residents back from achieving more, developing their home, and providing a nicer environment to raise a family? Right, so these are the questions that we need to be asking here, ladies and gentlemen. So there's quite a few problems that I see with this arbitrary decision. So I'm going to read these for you. So number one, it makes no common sense for dilapidated or regular homes to be heritage listed. It just doesn't make any sense. Number two, homeowners have reportedly lost hundreds of thousands of dollars off the value of their homes. Three, homeowners are restricted from value adding to their homes, as we mentioned before. Four, and the homeowners were not consulted, all right? So the council basically took it upon themselves to make this arbitrary decision. No ifs, no buts, just whacked it on, and they without any regard for the owners. So this really leaves us to ask a question, and that question is, was this decision indeed made out of some type of genuine desire to protect the character of the neighborhood, or could there have been other factors involved? What do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Could there have been other motivations for the council making this decision? Well, the truth is I don't know. So I thought that I would actually send a letter to every single council member. All right, so this is what I sent to them here. I'm going to read it to you. Morgan here from MCJ Report. I'll be making comment on this matter tonight. All right, so I asked them some questions. One, were affected ratepayers consulted prior to the decision to apply this overlay? Two, why have homes that appear dilapidated and in need of renovations or demolition been included? Three, what were the key determining factors taken into account when deciding which homes would be included and which would not? Four, can you unequivocally state that the decision to apply this interim overlay was completely free of conflict of interest and based solely on the objective of preserving the existing character of the neighborhood? Five, would you like to respond to claims that some homes have now drastically plummeted in value as a result of this overlay? Thank you, Morgan. Alrighty, so what do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Do you think that I got a response? No, well, of course I didn't. Nobody responded to me, and this is indicative of the way local government in many instances operates. They largely operate under the cloak of silence, in the shadows, and are very rarely held accountable for their actions. So what I would like to encourage is, I guess, a culture of holding people in office accountable at all levels. So if you've experienced something like this in your local council, then what I'd like you to do is go ahead and send an email to mcjaustralia@protonmail.com, because we really need to start naming these people and the more that they're able to get away with these types of arbitrary decisions that destroy people's lives, the more brazen they're going to become. And they would very much like to continue operating in the shadows, and they will continue to do so unless we expose them. So you can actually access all the councillors' details right here on their website. That's maribyrnong.vic.gov.au. All right, so I'm going to put that in the chat right now. All right, so that's in. All right, so you can find the mayor, you can get their phone numbers, email addresses, you can call them, you can email them. So go ahead and sign up at mcjreport.com, and I'll send you this link, because we really need to stay on these people. It's not fair and reasonable that you can have just a handful of people make an arbitrary decision that completely undermines the private property rights of the local residents. So what do you have to say about that, ladies and gentlemen? Alrighty, so moving on to the next topic here. Is Australia Day finished in Victoria? So the problem that comes to mind here for me is that when I look at somebody like Daniel Andrews, I see somebody who's trying to permanently change the culture here in Victoria. We know for a fact that Daniel Andrews is no fan of the Australian flag. He doesn't like Australia Day. And we also have some suspicions to believe that he does not like Anzac Day, because of course we've seen Anzac Day cancelled in the past, whereas other festivities were granted the approval to proceed. So I very much think that Daniel Andrews is really attempting to craft a culture in Victoria that is at odds with traditional Australianism. He is, of course, a self-admitted socialist from the socialist left faction of the Labor Party. And we know for sure that Daniel Andrews cancelling Australia Day is not indicative of, say, some type of repulsion that Daniel Andrews has to public parades. Of course, he's a big fan of public parades. I'll show you right here. That's Dan Andrews there at I believe it was a gay pride parade, having a very good time. There's another one there, of course. Daniel Andrews at a Indian Independence parade, and right there at a Chinese New Year parade, and 10 points if you can spot his bodyguards. Rightio. So yeah, as you can see, it's really not a matter of being against big crowds of people. He selectively chooses which causes he supports and which causes he does not, and seeks to shape the culture of society based upon his vision, not based upon the vision of what the average person wants or needs, based on what he wants. But unfortunately, here in Australia, we're living in a climate whereby apathy is running supreme. So we really need to get the word out there and start fighting a little bit harder, because otherwise our culture, our way of life as we know it, will be completely gobbled up by those who simply serve in their own self-interests. Alrighty, let me just make sure that we're connected here. Facebook, YouTube, I can see a bunch of comments coming in here. There's Mez, there's Tony, there's Australia Ray, how you going? It's great to see you guys all on board. Kathy says, globalization is the goal. Yep, you very well may be correct. Yep, that's right. Anyway, so let's keep this moving along, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? Where are we now? All right. Now, this next segment is probably going to piss you off a little bit, but I feel it's important to talk about because, again, these matters simply go under the radar and will continue to go under the radar unless people speak about them. So what do we have here? Greg Hunt set for $200,000 plus per annum due to a lifetime pension that he has received as a former MP who was elected to office before 2004. Now, I wish that I was making this up, but I am not. That's right. So MPs that were elected before 2004 entitled to a pension for the rest of their life. So in this instance, we're looking at the former Health Minister, Greg Hunt, right? Or as the former Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, prefers to refer to him as.
On the 19th of February, Minister Hunt called the...
I think we can all appreciate that little moment there by ScoMo. So what exactly is going on here, and why is it that Greg Hunt is entitled to this massive pension after leaving office? So I'm going to break it down for you and show you exactly how it works so you can be aware of it. Let me just open up the next listing here. All right, so this is how it's calculated, and you won't see this on the mainstream media, and these types of details, former politicians, they really don't want you to know about it. They'd prefer to keep you in the dark, but here's how it works. Calculation of Greg Hunt's lifetime pension. All right, so his former income when he was in office was $364,410 per annum, okay? So that was his base wage as an MP, plus an additional wage for being a minister. That's right. So the portfolio was health and aged care. The pensionable income was $291,528. All right, so that represents 80% of his former wage. 80% is the pensionable percentage. The date he was elected to office was the 10th of 11th, 2001, which entitles him to a lifetime pension of 75% of his former pensionable income, and that equates to $218,646 per annum for the rest of his life. Okay, so it's important to point out that that pension will increase relative to the increases in MP's wages, and domestic travel is not deducted from his pension. All right, so Greg Hunt also entitled to something called the Life Gold Pass, which allows him several trips around Australia per annum, courtesy of you and I, the taxpayer. All right, so that's what Greg Hunt gets post leaving office. I mean, it really boggles the mind, but maybe he deserves it. What do you think? I mean, we need to remember that over the past few years, Greg Hunt gave the Australian public such truthful health advice, didn't he? He gave advice that was founded upon facts, science, common sense, and he never ever led us in the wrong direction in regards to the advice that he gave in his capacity as health minister. So maybe he's worthy of this pension. In fact, I've got a few highlights here from Greg Hunt over the past couple of years. I'm going to play it for you now.
Both the two initial vaccines, the Pfizer and the AstraZeneca vaccine, the international evidence is that the safety impact for prevention of serious illness, hospitalisation and death has been determined to be up to 100%. There was a Lancet... If you are not vaccinated and you catch COVID, you could die. The world is engaged in the largest clinical trial, the largest global vaccination trial ever, and we will have enormous amounts of data. But what's the message for the public? It's safe, it's effective, it will help protect you, but it will also help protect your mum and dad, your grandparents, your nonna, all of Australia.
So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Greg Hunt, of course, just responding to the advice from the experts over the years. Now, it's also important to point out that as Minister for Health, Greg Hunt, of course, was very, very closely working with the Therapeutic Goods Administration, and due to the policy changes that were enacted, instigated by the Department of Health in relation to the espousing of therapeutic claims, it actually changed the manner in which people in office could speak about the provisionally approved COVID-19 vaccines. So generally with the Therapeutic Goods Administration, there are laws that prohibit making unfounded therapeutic claims about products that have either a provisional approval, full approval, or no approval whatsoever. And it was the Australian government that basically massaged the policy with the Therapeutic Goods Administration in regards to making therapeutic claims, which gave legal immunity to people such as Greg Hunt to say whatever they wanted to say about the provisionally approved vaccines at the time. So whether it was Greg Hunt, people in the media, celebrities, people online, they could tell you anything, make any type of claim in regards to health or risk without any type of legal liability whatsoever if they got things wrong. There's an interesting case study you can look at. It was the chef Pete Evans. He made therapeutic claims about a different product and he was dragged over the coals. So generally, if a person was to make an unfounded, unapproved therapeutic claim, they could be looking at huge fines, sometimes six-figure fines or potentially jail time. But of course, the government changed those policies specifically in regards to the COVID jab, and that's how they were able to effectively make these particular statements at the time. And that's just a matter of fact. That's just a change in policy that the government thought was necessary, I suppose, at the time in order to carry out what they were seeking to do. But those changes in policy were never explained to the public. I explained it through MCJ Report when it happened, but of course, I'm just one guy sitting in front of a green screen that can't get to everyone. And that's why I speak to you, you speak to your friends, you get the word out there, and that's how everything sort of comes together in the end. Yeah, so Greg Hunt there, just very happy. He's also landed a new job, by the way, so if the pension's not enough, he is now been appointed as the Advisory Council Chair at the Turner Institute at Monash University. That's right. So it says here that Monash Uni is pleased to announce the appointment of former Federal Minister for Health and Aged Care, Greg Hunt, the Foundation Chair of the Turner Institute. I actually sent Greg an email a little bit earlier today just to ask him whether or not the appointment, in regards to his new position, was negotiated after he left office or before he left office. And I also asked him whether or not he'd be apologising to the public for certain things that he's said in the past, maybe things that he regrets. I'm not anticipating a response, but you can feel free to get in touch with him anytime. I also asked him another question, which was, of course, whether or not he would forego his pension in light of attaining this new position with the Monash University. Once again, I'm not anticipating that I will receive a result, but this really just goes to show that a lot of these politicians can go into office, do whatever they want, not be held accountable, and live out the rest of their lives on a massive income courtesy of us, we the people. I think it's disgraceful, and it's something that needs to be looked at. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we're just about at the next segment of our show right here. So for those of you watching on Facebook and YouTube, I'm going to ask that you actually move on over to a different platform. Move on over to Rumble, Twitter, or Telegram. My handle is Morgan C. Jonas. The reason for that is that we have a wonderful interview in store with Laura Loomer. That's right. She is an independent investigative journalist from the United States, and we breach many topics that would otherwise get us kicked off the major social media platforms. So head on over to Rumble. That's rumble.com/user/Morgan C. Jonas, or Morgan C. Jonas on Telegram or Twitter, and I'll catch you over there so you can enjoy the interview in its entirety without any censorship.